Alright, so we're doing another video, and this time I'm going to go really fast because the games are going to start in about an hour. I probably should have done this yesterday, but I was like exhausted and ended up just passing out as soon as I end up finishing the video about Stake Ranked Episode 3. Still no cam. I'm working on it. I'm probably just going to buy one myself instead of asking to borrow the webcam all the time. So then at least that way I don't have to worry about it, and it's just one thing removed off the list. I also might buy an actual mic that's like relatively cheap, so I can put on earbuds instead of having to talk with headphones on so I can hear myself better. But anyway, we're talking about Blast Bounty 2026 Season 2. This tournament is interesting, I feel like, every year because of the fact that the underdog teams can pick the top ranked teams, from what I understand. So, as far as I understand, it's a bounty system. Basically, the underdog teams, the bottom 16 teams out of the 32, because there's 32 teams in the tournament, get to pick um, their opponent, right? The lowest ranked team, the lowest seed gets to pick their opponent, and the rest, um, then follow in order, right? So from like number 32 team gets to pick whatever in the top 16, and then, it would go 31, 30, 30, 29 until all the teams have been picked. And honestly, I'm very excited about a lot of the teams here. I'm not going to talk about every team in depth, but I'm just going to kind of run through expectations and probably talk about the lesser known teams more because they're more interesting, right? So just getting into this, Falcons have just won the major. And I'm not going to lie, this is a tournament where I could see them fail this tournament and maybe not even make it out of the online section because even though they do have players for it, Kerrigan is kind of a caller that is known to not really get up uh, get get up to his best work in online environments. So if they would fail here, I wouldn't be really super surprised. It's the start of the season. So yeah, Vitality. I think Apex really wants revenge and wants to kind of get back to winning ways after a failure at Cologne. I think for Apex, he's very hungry coming into the next season, and I would expect to see him kind of start challenging all these top teams and kind of trying to put trying to solidify his era even more. And Vitality is the best team of all time. So I wouldn't be surprised if I see Vitality win this tournament or even go super deep, right? One or the other. Furia, they're a bit of an odd spot. I mentioned at the major that they kind of had a shade of what Mongols did at Austin. And I don't think Mongols necessarily had a fraudulent run, but they had an easy run, and that kind of made the result look better than what it was because if Furia versed, I think any team on the other side of the bracket, whether that be Vitality or Spirit or Falcons, earlier they would have been out of the tournament. G2 is the exception. But overall, I wouldn't be surprised if they get out of the online section. Moladoy is pretty good online. Last time they were at Blast Rivals, they actually, like, Moladoy had to basically solo carry them, or not Blast Rivals, but Blast Bounty. Moladoy carried them through the online section because it looked like Quesarado and Yuri were just phoning it in. So I wouldn't be surprised if they make it to the LAN portion of this tournament and we see them play on LAN. I don't know if they're going to win this tournament. Probably not. I still think there is some. This team is kind of on a downward trend, and I don't really expect them to do much uh, once they make it to the LAN section. Spirit, uh, it really depends on, like, does Tenier and Zontix continue to improve? I think Magix has shown me enough as an IGL that I think the gamble has worked out of making Magix an IGL. Seems like he has a very good idea of how to mid round and use his pieces. I think a lot of the calling has been good. I think the utility improvements from Sotfik being in the roster has been a revelation because you can see Donk, he's having way more setup, way more support in the utility, and that allows him to get more multi kills and to not just get one kill and then instantly be traded. It allows him to actually, um, not have to suffer in these games. Shiro, I think, showed a lot of good things at the Clone. I think that was the best tournament I've seen Shiro play in quite a while, where he was super clutch and he had a lot of X Factor and he was the main carry for the squad. In playoffs, when Donk was kind of a bit quiet, it's really all up to Tenier. Does Tenier finally become more consistent and show that he can be the third star? Because I think that's the thing that Spirit needs is the secondary star rifler in Tenier to kind of show up. Zontix, I know people are calling for his head, and I do think there is a player who's actually playing this tournament who could replace him. We'll talk about him later, but I don't hate Zontix. I think some people are very critical of him because he makes a lot of mistakes in terms of the mechanical elements. Like, mechanically, he's pretty awful, but I don't hate Zontix's role in this team because I think he does do a lot of the dirty work that nobody wants to do. Aurora, brand new look. Aurora going international. They have Ash's coach, Kicks and Jim Fat. I think Aurora, I don't really know how to have expectations on this roster. I'm kind of going to give them this tournament as kind of a freebie. If they do nothing at this tournament, I wouldn't be disappointed. If they do something at this tournament, it's good for them, right? Like, in my opinion, I'm not really putting a lot of expectations on them at this tournament. Oh, yeah, by the way, Spirit could win the tournament. I didn't really give my expectations. I don't really have a lot of expectations for Aurora going into this tournament because we don't know how it's going to look. There's probably a lot of things that need to change, especially with the fact that a lot of the Turkish players are now switching to English, right? Ash is a brand new coach, Kicks in system. A lot of those things are up in the air. I do like the pickups they made. I think Jim Fan and Kickson are great pickups as well as Ash. They're excellent pickups, and I'm kind of curious how it looks. This is more of just like a feeler tournament for them. G2, I really don't like the wrinkle move, and I've been very against the wrinkle move for a while. Two biggest problems on this roster are Hunter and Nerds. And the fact that they didn't try and go for Kixon in this offseason is kind of crazy. The fact that Gizme wasn't on their radar, the fact that they didn't make a change in the IGL department, I think is the biggest problem. Sampayas, I think, had a very unenviable job being kind of a supportive opera that has to enable a bunch of aggressive riflers who kind of want resources in this roster, right? Some people are going to be like, Heavy God's not an aggressive rifler. If you watched him on C9, he absolutely was. Matouche is not a B anchor. I don't know why he's playing B anchor. Hunter needs to be way less selfish with his resources. And then taking Wrinkle, who is this aggressive, simple like opper, right? Like, because he literally models his gameplay off of simple. I'm not gonna lie, I can see this roster failing like really bad. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they get upset by Namiga because I actually rate Namiga. And they just picked up Robo, which I didn't talk about as a move. I think it's interesting, but we might do another roster rumors video later. Mouse, I hate the PR edition. Not because I hate PR, I actually love PR, but the fact that the role clashes in this squad are just massive. Now, I was a person who did make a video talking about how role clashes don't really matter and that people shouldn't focus on roles too much. The problem I have though is I do focus on stylistic or role, like kind of role fits. Can a player with their skill set fit within a selective role? And Zelix and PR don't really fit in that selective role. Zelix playing anchor spots doesn't make sense because of everything he did in the Mouse NXT squad. It makes zero sense. PR is kind of an anchor, but he doesn't play in anchor spots in a traditional sense. He is more aggressive on the extremity. He's willing to test bomb sites on his lurks, right? It's not. I don't like what they're doing. And then Zelix also hard opening. I hate. So honestly, I don't like this Mouse roster just because I think it's poorly constructed. They went for maximum talent, but with none of the support pieces. And they had one of the best supported players in the world in Jim Fat. So I don't really rate this roster. I wouldn't be surprised if they do get upset. Who are they even firsting? In their first match, reversing their Cooler Tigris, which has a prospect that I made a demo review about and I never uploaded because I didn't like how it turned out. Um, but we will be talking about him later. Foot with xCloud. xCloud is about the same as Lonax in my opinion. I don't think really it's that much of a downgrade or even an upgrade. xCloud you could argue is arguably better than Lonax. It's like sort of debatable. xCloud has I think higher highs than Lonax, but I think he is a little less consistent than Lonax. Um, but I think xCloud fits the role of what Lonax was kind of brought in to do, which is fill the Mikaze position of being a aggressive opener who just takes a lot of fights. Um, I think xCloud fits that role more than Lonax. I'm pretty sure when Lonax was in teams like, I don't know if it was Nexus, but he was more of like a star rifler who got to close in these things. So I don't. I like them picking up xCloud for Lonax. I think they're pretty similar skill level, and I don't think we're going to see a massive drop off from Foot. Mongols with Tikawak and Darkmeister. What happens with them? Um, oh yeah, Foot could make the land portion. Mouse, wouldn't be surprised if they get upset. Um, Mongols, I don't know. I don't know. Like losing Mizzino and Senzu and now benching Cobrazera. Like Tikawak is a very talented piece, and 910, in my opinion, is like the only player on this roster that's like remotely close to being a top 20 player. 910 is like, I would say he's a top 20 player this year. He's been very good. In his overall round, like his overall game, I think he's been excellent. I think he has been the star for this team since Senzu has left or just doesn't play with the squad for whatever reason. Chickwalker is very talented, but I don't know if he's going to do good enough against this opposition. He's never faced opposition like this. Darkmeister, haven't watched a single demo of this guy, so I have no clue what to be expected. In their first match, they were facing off against Heroic, I actually slightly favor just because I've seen what they've done on LAN against decent tier 2 opposition. So honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they go out in the first round. FaZe with Jabone has been kind of a revelation. Jabone has been a bit of a revelation. FaZe burst eyeballers at the XC Pro League, and we saw how that turned out. FaZe won. FaZe have a very strong cache. It seems like they were putting in a lot of time on that map in terms of the utility and the way they play, their understanding of the mid round. There's a lot of things I think they do well. I think their executes are rather good. And I think Twist has kind of embraced the idea of being kind of a self-sacrificial IGL because when they go into bomb sites, Twist is entering again. He's kind of doing that like uh, phase twist of old, right? In 2022, where he's like the explosive entry into bomb site execs, where he's just able to get those multi kills that were, because of his insane aim. Because Twist has incredible mechanics, incredible aim. Frozen has still been the rock for this team in terms of being a star player, and Jabone I think is I think a lot of people are super excited for him. I'm super excited for him because obviously I was somebody who watched him a bit on Big Academy and I saw that he had skills, and I think playing in an online environment, I think they're going to be fine. Netu has been okay. Jacob I think needs to be replaced pretty convincingly. But and I still think they should have got Gizmy and you could have put Twist as the hard entry with Netsu, but they didn't want to do that. That's fine. Gamer Legion, they picked up Flamis to replace PR, so Flamis gets to go back to Gamer Legion where he initially, kind of got noticed and picked up. Right, most people know he actually got picked up, or noticed on Amiga, but most people who watch only the Tier 1 tournaments actually saw him really stand out at Shanghai, right? Shanghai Major. The rules are a bit weird. Flamis is going to have to adapt to some anchor positions because Rez is going to be playing the star spots. Rez has been incredible this year. I think Rez has been the only really solid carry of this team. Towson, Hypex, PR are up and down tournament to tournament. Snacks sometimes is awful individually. I don't mind the way Snacks calls. It's not always pretty. I think there's sometimes problems. I think he sometimes gives too much freedom and he's a little too loose with the default. Because Snacks kind of expects the players to know what to do within the mid rounds and to do their job properly. And I think sometimes that doesn't work. But I don't hate what Snacks is doing. By the way, there are a lot of teams I'm going to have to get through. So I'm going to need to be faster with this. But honestly, Game Religion, in their first match, they have Hotu. Hotu have not been looking good since they dropped Duke for Sora. Mizu is, super talented in these things. We'll talk about them later. But honestly, Gamer Legion, I wouldn't be surprised if they don't make it to the LAN section. They might make it to the they might make it to the second round or maybe even the third round, but I don't think they're going to make it to the LAN. Astralis, they just recently picked up Neo. I'm kind of curious how that's going to turn out. This roster kind of collapsed at the end of this last season. Fuzi had an incredible beginning and middle section and then fell off completely. Ryu had a great crack-off, but then kind of tapered out throughout the rest of the season. He was super inconsistent, super hit or miss. Had great series, had awful series. You just never know what you could get from him. Astera's been super reliable, and Yabi is. I think he's good, but he's just a bit up and down. Too much for being a secondary star rifler. Hooksy as a caller, I think doesn't have a lot of leadership traits, as I've mentioned. I think as a tactician, he's completely serviceable, but I think as a leader, a leader of men, I think it's something he's never really developed. And these are the main focus points I want to highlight on because I think those are the problems we saw with Astralis was the fact that Fuzi fell off. Hooksy doesn't really know how to get his pieces, to not play together, but back in the game when they're having a rough start, right? So I'm kind of curious what Neo does. I'm curious if anything changes. I'm curious if the tactics look better because that's what Neo did when he first came into FaZe. So we'll see. Magic, as everybody who has watched me in the past knows I love Magic for two reasons, and that's Masvel and Tenzi. These two I have been so high on for quite a few months at this point, right? Tenzi is a player who I have a lot of, I just love watching him, right? Because I think he's so fun. He is a super overqualified role player as he is right now. His aim is so smooth, and I think Magic can bang heads, right? They're playing also another tournament. They get 3D max, I think, in both their tournaments, surprisingly. And if you remember watching Stake Ranked episode 2, Magic banged 3D Max's head in. It wasn't even close. I don't think Kersey is going to do anything different, so I imagine Magic will make it out of the first stage pretty convincingly, or the first round pretty convincingly. Second round is a bit of a question, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see them possibly make it to the LAN. I don't think they will. I think they're going to fall short. It might make it to the third round and then fall, but I love Magic and I'm a super big fan of them. Pain have been tapering off for a while since their I Am Atlanta run. I still think this roster has a lot of problems. I still don't rate Snow as a player. Period Junior is super inconsistent. VSM has not been super comfortable in his support roles, and Safe is not an upgrade over NQZ. Big Uzera's calling also, I seems like the mid rounds fall apart a lot on this team, so I'm kind of out on Pain. I've been out on Pain since 2025. Um, or the end of 2025 when they, kind of push Snow into more of the star roles over Davideus. Alliance, Bob XD, King of Sweden. No, but seriously, I think this roster has actually looked super good, especially at XC Pro League, where I think they could have beaten 9Z. They actually had chances in that series. Bob XD has shown. By the way, I should have made a demo review of Bob XD then, where he had a complete masterclass against, I think it was Nemesis, which is a CIS team that I've been super, hyped about because of two of their pieces, really three of their pieces. Um, but yeah, I think Alliance has looked good since losing Male 09, which kind of sucks. I still think Male 09 fit the roles a bit better with the squad, because Ovid's kind of getting to go back to his old roles from what I understand. Ovid was more of a star player in the past, but he became an aggressive opener hard entry player for Alliance because of, Male 09 coming into the squad. Because they need to free up space for Male 09, obviously, and to give him more of the late rounds, more of the lurk positions. Bob XC, I think, has filled in the role of the crazy, aggressive entry, like Flamesy like player super well. And even though he is inconsistent, he is very talented. I don't know how to feel about Alliance going into this tournament. They are facing off against Wildcard, and Wildcard bombed out last place at Stake Ranked Episode 3. So there's a high chance they do make it to the second round, maybe even the third round, depending on how things go. M80, I still think Hex was better than JBA, and I've been super big on that train for a while. Even though Hex had a bad stake ranked episode 3, I don't care. I still think Hex was currently the better player than JBA, and potentially was still had a higher, I would say potentially was developing where JBA hasn't really developed despite having 2 years of, being a potential player, right? A prospect, right? I don't think JBA is bad, by the way. I still like JBA. Lake has kind of fallen off a bit this year. Slacks has not been the same player he has been in the past, right? I think in 2025, the second season, Slacks was actually developing and was becoming a, kind of a player who I was kind of, I think was slightly underrated as an opper. Because against going against the tier one teams, I think he was doing better. But he hasn't really lived up to that at recently. So yeah, and Swisher has actually stepped up this year, but I don't know how to feel about M80 in their first round. They are facing against Nip. That is beatable, but I think Nip are better. Currently, I've seen more from Nip recently because of Stake Ranked Episode 3, where Stown has kind of, it seems like Stown's coming more into the op role. Shush has kind of found a bit of his form. And Note, I think, has been kind of the missing piece for this Nip squad for a while because I think Karen just wasn't able to do the thing, just didn't play the same, like he didn't play the role that Snappy needed. So yeah, I imagine Nip will beat them. And talking about Nip, honestly, super impressed. I do think they have problems still. I still think this team sometimes throws rounds they shouldn't and sometimes loses situations they really shouldn't. But I still love the pieces. When I look at all the pieces, I still think this squad can work out. And I still have hope that they can become a top 10 team at some point this year. I've been super high. I think Stown as an opper has been kind of like underrated for the people who haven't watched him. I think Stown like when you watch, the eye test is good, right? He does miss some shots, but the eye test is good. Like the decision making, these things. He does play a, not a super passive style of opper. He does play like he is a rifler who is using the op, where he plays super aggressive and up in their face and proactive, and I like that. And I like how dynamic he's been. So, and on top of that, anybody who's watched Note and Young Ninjas knew he was a very talented player, very flicky, great movement in combat. Um, and I think he fit. I think Snappy is very happy to have a piece like Note to work with, as well as X Casper Sky, which everybody knows X Casper Sky is great. I don't really need to go into that. Heroic, new look Heroic won stake ranked episode 3 with Martinez Saw and Brolin coming into the roster, as well as Dodo. Honestly, I don't like the way that Brolin's being used. I would prefer if he gets more of the star positions over Sasp and Krizen. However, Krizen and Sasp are kind of like getting more of the star spots, and I'm fine with that even though I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, I do prefer if Brolin could play those, because I think remembering back to what Brolin was in Fnatic, right? He was the young up and comer for Fnatic, and he was kind of the reason why Fnatic got revitalized in 2019. Because Brolin was a very good star player, right? He was a very good, very serviceable star player, right? For that squad, because he made them competitive and he actually helped them win tournaments or a tournament where he was the MVP. And I still think Brolin can beat that. He's kind of playing like the Mel's Brolin, where he's playing like supported positions, not the IGL version, but the one where he was the player, right? And while I'm not a fan of that, I still have faith in this heroic squad. I think Martinez Saw will continue to develop, and continue to get better and better as time goes on. Because again, this is first international roster he's ever been on. And Krizen as an IGL, I think people are going to come around to this guy as an IGL. I've seen so many people be so negative about Krizen, but anybody who watched him on OG and watched what he did with those pieces, I think honestly he is an IGL with a lot of potential, right? Not only individually is he good, but he's also got some good set play ideas. He is the second coming of Snappy, and I understand why people are very frustrated with Snappy, like people are frustrated with Krizen. It's because set play IGLs sometimes look like they're throwing rounds when the set plays don't work. And I understand why people who are casuals and don't understand that are going to hate those IGLs. But that's why I am defenders of those IGLs, because I think that style of IGLing is difficult to make work, and you have to have a lot. I love set play IGLs because it's just super unique style. Um, Sharks are kind of I think they're probably a team that we're going to see continue to get better within the South American region and kind of make a name for themselves, especially over a team like Pain that has been slumping. I think they have talented pieces in Doc and Koala. I think those two pieces are very talented. Their calling style is very chaotic, very like typical Brazilian esque, like, um, and that's fun and that's cool. They play a lot of Nuke, is what I remember. And I still actually haven't fully demo reviewed people like Koala and Doc. I've just seen some of their like moments when I've watched the games, and I've been generally impressed with them. I don't know how to rate their potential. Oh yeah, Heroic and Nip could make LAN potentially, because they are on the bottom half of the top 32, right? Yes, they are. But yeah, Sharks, I don't know how to actually rate the squad or their expectations. In their first match, they are versing. They're versing Furia, and that's a tough one. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't favor them, even if it's online. So yeah. Liquid, if Shui is playing this tournament, I have no faith for this roster. If JT is playing this tournament, which is the theoretical IGL, the IGL I have been wanting on this team for a while, because Shui has completely fallen. I think Shui's like stock as an IGL has kind of dropped like significantly since his mouse days. But if Shui's playing this one, I have no expectations. Not to mention they're versing Vitality in the first round. I like Jorko. Anybody who's watched me talk about prospects knows I mentioned Jorko. The guy is a mechanical phenom. Like he's an actual freak mechanically. Some of the stuff he does is actually wild. I think his understanding, like he's a savant in late rounds and clutching. I think he has unbelievable understanding of how to play clutch situations in late rounds. He's good on a rifle. He's good on pistols. He's good on an op. Like And I think they need to enable him as an opper. I think they need to give him freedom and let him go for the picks he wants to on CT side. And even T side, they have to set him up and enable him more. I think on focus, we'll talk about focus later. They actually picked up a player who I've been highlighting, Jakob. But I think Pody's a good pickup as well to replace Jorko. Jorko wasn't really set up on that team because he was kind of playing a supportive style of op to enable the riflers. I don't like that, and I don't think he should have ever been playing that style because that's not what he was on Copenhagen Wolves when he was playing with Matios. Nemesis, they're a CIS squad that I've highlighted quite a few times. I like Resalt, I like Texi, I like Sedame. I think Selters and IGL has been doing some pretty unique things. Some of the set plays I like, some of the ideas I like. Magic Key is just a serviceable opper. I don't think he's great, but he's fine. But Texi and Sedame, very talented CIS prospects. Texi's really young. He's a twin brother of Noda. I've mentioned that a few times. Texi is more this late round closer player. And while he does sometimes struggle like with consistency, he's sometimes super up and down because they are forcing him to be an opener, right? He is playing more of the opener position for this squad. It sometimes is, I still have a lot of faith in Texi. Sedame, I think, has been the clear star of this roster with Result. I think Result and Sedame have been the two stars, where Texi has kind of been the third tertiary piece that occasionally shows up. Result, super talented anchor CIS prospect. He's been around for a while, and he's been kind of he was not picked. He was on 9Z or 9Pandas, and a lot of people knew him from 9Pandas and Forza, I believe. But the reason he didn't get picked up by other squads is because he's a bit of a head case, is what I've heard behind the scenes. He's a bit of a hard player to deal with, and he's tough to. Um, I think if you even read the interview that he did at XE Pro League, he does come off as a bit of a unique personality that's a bit difficult to deal with. So that's why he didn't really get picked up by any other teams, despite being super talented, right? And Nemesis, I don't know how they're going to do with this tournament. This is online. This is their home turf, right? If anybody's watched online CS, they know they can do a lot of damage because they do win a lot of online tournaments and they do play, or they make it to the finals, right? Most of the time, or go have deep runs. Astralis is super takeable, so I wouldn't be surprised if I do see them beat Astralis. Um, I still just want to see Texan and Zidane play as well as Result. I think they're all super talented. 3D Max, I saw better things at them from Snake Ranked Episode 3, especially from Kersey and Masuta. I think Gravity is playing the supportive pieces or supportive position okay, and while Lucky aesthetically looks awful to watch, he does get numbers. I think the problem with 3D Max I've seen over the kind of since Body and the former coach left, um, that's actually his name. His name is which sounds awful to actually say when you're trying to like move past a sentence fast. Um, but the tactics have kind of completely fallen off. A lot of the set play aggressive pieces that they've had just don't look they don't have any bite to them, right? It's all bark, no bite with 3D Max recently because they don't have the fraggers to necessarily carry them over the line, but they don't have the tactics to necessarily make the fragging the individual players that are relatively weak not matter. I think Kersey has been a good addition to the squad, and I do think he is an upgrade over Exorcist if you're moving Gravity to the anchor spots, but I don't know how to feel about the squad. I feel like they're not going to be relevant this season, and I think against Magic they're just going to get shot out of the server. Like I'm just going to say it, Tenzi and Masval are going to eat them up if they pick Ancient. So yeah, Eyeballers. I've been super positive about the Crims edition. I don't think they have a star rifler because of that. I think their star rifler was Bob XD. He was this, aggressive, kind of crazy opener who was able to give this team such a high ceiling. I think Crims adds, a very strong floor to this roster, but I think you do lack a star rifler. Seems like they're trying to move Dex more into that position and remove him from supportive positions. And Dex, I think, has skill, but he's inconsistent. And Rolf is just kind of mid as a support player. Maxer has kind of been their star rifler, but he's like passive and closer like, so it's difficult. Who are they facing? They're facing FaZe. It's possible they can win it, but I'm not gonna lie. I think FaZe just have the better individuals since they added Jabone. So yeah, I don't think they're gonna do anything at this tournament. Gentlemates have no fangs without Martina Saw. I'm going to say that there is no reason to watch Gentlemates without Martinez's. I think Martinez's was the most interesting piece about this roster. I didn't even know this was their IGL or not IGL coach. I didn't even know they had a Swedish coach. Um, no offense to Crucial, I don't know anything about the guy really. I've heard the name, I recognize the name, but he's not Martinez, and Martinez was a massive source of numbers for this squad when it came to fragging and being, carrying the CT side, because I think on CT side he was unbelievably good with an op in tier two, and even in tier one tournaments he showed like he could kind of keep up with the top dogs, with the op right in his hand on CT sides. So yeah, I don't really rate them at this tournament. They are facing pain. That's actually kind of a blessing in disguise that they got that draw. Sinners have kind of fallen off since making the major, and they haven't been anything really good. I like Shock as a anchor. I think he has really good aim for an anchor, and I think he's relatively cerebral player. Beastick, I think as an IGL has good ideas, and actually frags pretty okay. Moto is fine, and then Kisarek and Stresser as your store riflers are okay. The problem with that Sinners has is they don't have a single individual that can bail them out of bad situations. Um, and that is very noticeable. And facing a team like Foot in the opening round, they're going to get smashed. I'm just going to say it right now. If Foot are shooting on anywhere near the level they normally do, they're going to get smashed out of the server because Foot have the individuals, even if sometimes it doesn't look as cohesive. And I think xCloud is going to fit in for Lonex's role pretty okay. Nuclear Tigris, anybody who has watched this team online knows there's a one really big reason to watch this team, and it's mostly Flauser, but the other one is Senka because Senka is just funny, and this guy is the IGL in tier 2 that pulls out, like, uses an MP9 and a MAC 10, I think the most I've ever seen out of any IGL ever. Like, this guy has a MAC 10 or MP9 in his hand in, like, 90% of gun rounds. It's actually wild. But the other one is Flauser, and anybody who has been watching Nuclear Tigris knows this kid is super talented. For being only 18 years old, this kid is going to be a future top 20 player. I have a lot of faith in him. Mechanically, he's excellent. The amount of aggression and proactivity he has in his positions, I think, tells me he's going to transition to tier 1 teams very well if ever given the chance, because I think mechanically he already has the talent. So keep an eye out for this guy. He is super talented, right? And he's very aggressive. Like, he is used as his brute force entry. Um, but yeah, he also has a bit of a brain on him, right? When you watch how he plays some of the late round situations, how he uses utility, he's actually a relatively smart player. So I am super excited to watch Flauser. They face Mouse in their first match, I'm pretty sure. Is it Mouse? Yes, it's Mouse, and I just want to see him. How Flauser does, right? The other pieces are okay, right? McHughes, Yuki, and Zika. Zika has good numbers for tier two as an opper, but McHughes and Yuki are kind of just supportive anchor players, role players that do their job very well. Hotu, I don't know. This roster is weird. Getting rid of Duke for Sora, I think, has kind of nerfed them. I don't even know who's calling on this squad anymore. I think Kadeo is supposed to be calling, but I don't know. I think they should have kept. Somebody said they should have kept Kadeo because I think as a supportive piece, he was actually very good for this squad. Mizu is talented as a young CIS prospect, and Norbert is still good in terms of the numbers he outputs. Frontalis is just mid for a CIS hopper. There's a lot better CIS hoppers within the region. And Frontalis has some high highs, but I'm not super big on him. And Delushka, I actually just haven't watched anything from him. He has good numbers. He was on Bebop before, but I don't know how to feel about him. Hotu are in a weird spot, and they are versing against Gamer Legion in their first round, and I do favor Gamer Legion slightly, even though it's online. Focus, since losing Jorko and since Volt went to Nemesis, or not Nemesis, he went to, what is the team? It's with Slend. Whatever team has Infinite, that's it. He went to the team with Slend in Infinite. They picked up Pody as their opper to replace Shorko, and they picked up Jakob. Now, anybody who watched my Swedish prospects video, where I talked about Swedish prospects, knows I am very high on Jakob. I think Jakob is super talented. as a Swedish player. And while he hasn't faced this level of opposition yet in his career, I think he can. He's been very consistent for the squad. He is the main reason, or very consistent for Johnny Speeds. He has been their star player through and through. I think Johnny Speeds hasn't had really any firepower at all, but he's been kind of the reason they get to win series against decent opposition, like tier 2 opposition, because really they're in tier 3. Um, when they punch above their weight class, it's because of this guy. He's 21 years old. He's young. He's a star player, right? He's a kind of a closer. Um, he's like a playmaker, is what I would say, right? Like he plays like star positions, but then he kind of plays like some of the late rounds, but he like sometimes opens up the map. He's a bit of an interesting player. He's kind of that prototypical Swedish CS where they're kind of hybrids, right? They're not actually one or the other. They're not closer, they're not opener, they're just kind of hybrids. That's the best way I can describe Jakob. But I like this focus team. I think picking up Pody to replace Jorko is good. I think Pody fits the roles of Jorko better as a supportive style opper who is not going to ask for a lot of resources. I thought Pody was pretty good on Ents. I think he was their best player for a period of time. Of course, other than SDY. But their first match is against Aurora. It is takeable because Aurora, we have no idea what to expect from them. Same thing with Focus and switching up 2 players. I hope they give Yaka most of the star roles. They can put him on some like anchor spots like ramp on nuke and stuff like that because I think he can play that relatively competently. But I give him more of the star spots, right? ZTR take a hit for him and give him most of the star spots. Banjo, everybody knows I like Banjo. Banjo is Jimmy too. And honestly, the fact that Jim Fat and Banjo go head to head in the server against each other, I think a lot of people are going to realize how similar they are as players. Because they're very similar, by the way. And by the way, Jimmy is younger than Banjo. Banjo, I think, is 21, 22. He's 22. Jimmy is 2 years younger than him, which is so wild to me. 100 Thieves recently picked up Gizmy and benched a Gil. I'm just going to say this right now. Agil is not a bad player, but he is getting benched because Rain failed as an IGL. The fact that they got Gizmy in the offseason is kind of crazy, considering teams like FaZe, G2, Gamer Legion, maybe. Like, these teams should have been in the mix for Heroic, maybe. I wouldn't say so. I like Kristen. Maybe Nip. Should have been in the mix for Gizmy because I think Gizmy is an incredibly talented IGL, and anybody who watched what he did with that Monty squad knows he is super talented. He gets them more out of I think this season, if we watch Luminosity, you're gonna see why Luminosity actually failed by not just benching Lux and signing Gizmy as well. Because they did themselves a awful. They picked up a core of players that rely the most on their IGL, and you picked an IGL who hasn't really done a lot with actually relatively talented pieces in people like Lotto and Dumal. So I'm just gonna say it right now. The fact that 100 Thieves got him is kind of wild. I think 100 Thieves are going to get better by the addition of Gizmy. I think I have expectations that this team might break into the top 30, top 20. We might see them at the next major because I think Gizmy is just super talented. And anybody who watched what he did on Monty, um, Gizmy is also known to anti-strat rather well. However, their first opponent is Falcons, and Falcons are kind of known at Falcons are an improvisation team because of Kerrigan and Nico and Mondesi and these pieces. They're a team built by stars. I still think they have better star power. They just have too much star power for 100 Thieves to really overcome. Even though Device has had a recent uptick in performance, which I'm happy about because I do like Device as a player. I think Poi is still very talented, and I think Sierra has kind of fallen off since his initial beginning with this team, but I think Sierra is going to get back to a decent level because I still rate Sierra as an individual player who is still very talented, right? The other team is OG. OG, I don't have expectations for. I like Adam B. When I did the Swedish Prospects video, talked about Adam B. I really like Adam B. I think he's super talented. He's a bit of a flex rifler. He does kind of whatever the team needs. He has some level of aggression, some level of clutching, some level of trading. He's just a very well-rounded player, and comparing him to Susp, I think Adam B is actually the better player. But Susp is the more supportive piece. So it's a bit hard to comment on that, right? Because I think Adam B is more of a star, where Sussman is more supportive in nature. But when you watch them on teams like Young Ninjas when they played with Nilo, they were kind of setting up Nilo with the aggression they took. Spooky's the other piece I think is pretty decent. Spooky is weird because he has like high highs and he has low lows. Like his highs are incredible, and some of the he has very good raw aim. Um, but I've seen moments where he just like he's very inconsistent sometimes. And while I do like watching him and I do think he can be a player who can continue to develop despite being a bit older, it's starting to happen. He's been around the scene for a while now that I'm starting to be like, I don't see a lot of like I don't know how much longer he's got in terms of like time to improve, right? Um, do I think OG are going to do anything? Probably not. Their first opponent is Spirit, and I'm not going to lie, that's a nightmare fuel matchup for them because Spirit are just going to shoot them out of the server. Donk could probably play that game by himself and probably win. So yeah. Wild card, they had a disappointing showing at Snake Ranked Episode 3 recently. And in this tournament, they are facing off against Alliance. I think that's a winnable, like, that matchup is pretty 50-50. I'd probably favor Alliance slightly more, probably 60-40. Alliance favored, but while I do like this roster and I like the way it's constructed, I think the Manha is a very talented IGL who is finally getting a shot at a decent team. I think Wildcard is a good project that he went to. A lot of people are questioning whether or not, why didn't he stay on Ill Will? He wasn't being paid, guys. And I'm not going to lie, Namanha has been doing this for a while. Apparently, he was working a full-time job when he was in Tier 2 on X Zero Tenacity, or not X Zero Tenacity, but Zero Tenacity. And that's why you saw moments where he was like very, sometimes inconsistent. But a lot of people, I think the people at Ill Will, the players he played with Dihan Haji, basically said Namanha is a super talented IGL, and this guy is, basically the reason we're here. So I have a lot of faith in Manha. I've seen a lot of good things from him. He is an IGL who goes for some crazy plays. He plays some star positions. He is an IGL who likes to, kind of back himself, and I like that. I think Hex is a talented NA player who has continued to develop this last year or so. And he has been the star player for this squad despite playing a lot of the supportive pieces. Rek is a bit underrated, and Suxi is kind of a nice glue guy who does a lot of the aggressive opening and entering for the team to get them into the positions, right? So honestly, I like Wildcard, and I want to see them do well at this tournament. But Alliance is not necessarily an easy matchup. It's pretty even. Namiga is the last team we're talking about, and honestly, I really like this team. And I like this team for one reason in particular, and it's Sypho. I love Sypho. Sypho is one of the players I wanted to highlight, and I wanted to make a demo review before this tournament happened. However, CS updated and it destroyed all my demos that I actually had planned to watch for, because I was gonna like demo review Adam B, Sypho. I was gonna do one of probably Poi. I was gonna do one of Flauser. I was gonna do one of Zorko. I was gonna do a bunch of players. And sadly, that update happened, and I was like, I'm not resetting my game back to an older version just to watch it. But Sypho is super talented. He's this anchor closer, work player. He's a very methodical player. He's very like calculated with a lot of the decisions he makes. I still think King T made a take about the fact that Sypho should probably replace Sontix on Spirit, and I actually completely agree with it. I think Sypho is super talented. Spirit Academy still have him on loan, and they could recall him at any moment if they really wanted to. They actually recently picked up another former Spirit Academy player in Robo to replace Lear. Robo is an IGL from the CIS region that can actually frag. I've seen some good things that he's done on Spirit Academy and X Ruby. He's relatively young. He's only 20 years old. Kind of sad that Lear gets shafted again because I think Lear set up Sypho rather well, and I need to see Robo do the same. I need to see Robo allow Sypho to have the proactivity that he does because Sypho is super talented, and I don't want to see that. I don't want to see him wasting away on this Namika project, or not be utilized properly because I think Lear utilized him properly. Do I have any expectations for them? No, but I hope they beat G2 just so I can say I was still right. The fact that Nerds and Hunter need to be replaced and that benching Sampaius was not the problem. But that's all I have for this video. There is no webcam again. And I'm kind of curious about the teams. I hope we get some fun upsets. I hope to see teams like Nuclear Tigris and 100 Thieves and Amiga and Focus, Magic, Nip, Heroic. Like these teams make some interesting moves or interesting results happen at this tournament. Liquid, if they have JT, if they have Shui, I don't care. But yeah, that's all I have for this video, and hopefully you enjoyed. This is going to be a very fast upload because I am not editing this.